You're listening to WWDB AM Talk 860. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived looking forward. At the intersection of justice and community is The Looking Forward Show. And now, here's your host, Jeffrey Abramowitz.
Welcome to the Looking Forward Show. I'm Jeff Abramowitz, and you're listening to WWDB AM Talk 860 and 97.5 HD2 FM. You know, I am so super excited about the show today. The Looking Forward Show moved over to our new home at WWDB, and we've had a number of shows recently under our belt. Really excited about it. We've been talking about community and justice, and that's where all this show centers on is, how can we change the needle? How can we move the needle so that, we can really have an impact in our communities and make change happen for people that have challenges in life? Sometimes it's a criminal record, sometimes it's addiction, sometimes housing insecurity, food insecurity. And we are going to be talking today about jobs and careers. I should be taking the word jobs out of my vocabulary because I don't believe in jobs. I think jobs are one thing. Using the term jobs leads to something that people get up and oftentimes they do it because they don't love it. And when you do something you love to do, you stick with it, you keep doing it. And that to me is a career. Like, I wish for everybody the same energy and excitement I have every day when I get up in the morning. Like, I can't wait to get out of bed every morning because I start my day, I get into work, I love what I do. And that centers on the topic today because we're going to be talking about career opportunities and the challenges people face with a criminal background. So our guest today is a gentleman named Augie Ghilarducci. And Augie, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff. Thanks, and thanks for inviting me onto the program.
Oh, it's great to have you. We first connected, gosh, it's been a while. We first connected years ago at a conference, and we both cornered each other, and I had heard of some of the work that you were doing. You had heard some of the work that I was doing. And then we kind of hit it off and went right to town with some discussions, and love the work that you're doing. And we're going to hear all about that in a minute. But I want to set the stage today because recently Sean Bushway and Jeff Korsenik, Sean is with Rand Corporation. He wrote an article that was published in the Harvard Business Review. And the article was about hiring people with criminal records, which has really been an interesting debate today. Because a lot of employers are looking for that untapped talent pool that's out there, men and women that have come home from incarceration, or maybe have something in their criminal background that has prohibited or stopped them from getting a career opportunity, and really kind of put them in a cycle where they're setting them up for failure and going back inside the criminal justice system. So I do believe that a job is really, in a career, is an important thing to have when you go through our justice system and you begin to navigate your way back. I don't think it's the only thing you need. There's so many pieces of it we're going to talk about today. But the article by Jeff and Sean really talked about the myths about hiring people that are criminally, have criminal records and criminal backgrounds, and what are things that employers look at, and what should they be looking at, and what really makes no sense to look at all. So we're going to have a fun discussion today. I'm looking forward to it. Just one last piece of business. If you at all are interested in being on the Looking Forward Show in the future, hit me up, lookingforwardshow@gmail.com. And definitely you want to check out our YouTube channel. And we're also podcasting at all of your favorite podcasting venues, so check it out. Augie, you're amazing, and you have a great story to tell. And I'm not going to steal your thunder because I think it's the way you tell it is amazing too. But can you tell the audience a little bit about Augie and your journey?
Sure. So I start the same way all the time. I was raised in a middle-class home by two terrific parents. I was taught right from wrong. I finished school. I started a company. For 14 years, thought myself successful. And I can't explain why, this was 30 years ago, but I got involved with the wrong people, and I made some really horrible choices and bad decisions. And among those bad decisions was deciding to go to trial, having been indicted for investment fraud. And I went to trial and testified at my trial. And I ended up with a 190-month sentence in federal prison. I served 13 years from July of 2005, returned to Chicago in the halfway house in July of 2017, and actually finished my sentence after 10 months in the halfway house on May 1st of 2018.
I want to stop you there for a second because we really both run similar paths. For my audience that knows, we have I did 5 years in the federal system, also taking responsibility for some bad choices that I made. And I love that word because I think too often, especially when we talk with people that have been gone through the white collar system, that there are often excuses and there's often words that are used that really don't accept the reality that we all make choices in life, and that those choices often lead to things that are not so pleasant, but they're lessons that come out of them. And that's really where, where we learn. We learn by, doing things, not doing them so well and coming back again and doing them over again. I'm curious about your bid for a little bit. And I know it's a little bit triggering for me sometimes when I talk about it, but I'm curious because like yourself, I'm wondering if, did you, your time away, what was it like? Like, what did you do during your time away?
Almost from the beginning, we have to have a job, right? In federal prison, everybody has a job. So I ended up getting a job first in safety, but I transferred to education. So I spent most of my time working in education, and my job was to develop and instruct courses to fellow inmates. And so that, allowed me to develop a skill I really had never explored before, but it also allowed me to get to know a lot of people. And I think over time that was of benefit to me because part of what I do now is based upon just learning and the stories that I heard about people that left and came back. But so I spent a lot of time in education. When I transferred to the second prison, the first one was Sandstone, Minnesota. I went right up the road to Duluth, Minnesota to the camp when I got under 10 years to go. And I like to say, and I'm pretty sure about this, Duluth is the coldest place on earth. I was there for over 9 years. And there I continued to work in education. I also developed a hobby in hobbycraft. I learned how to oil paint. So it was something to do that kind of got my mind out of the situation. And my last 5 years, I was clerk in the RDAP dorm, the Federal Prison Drug Program. So I learned all about CBT and the other things having to do with rational thinking. And I will say that I attended more than 1,000, no exaggeration, 1,000 of the daily upbeat meetings, which is, it's more than any human being should ever have to endure. But I did that, and that kind of led me right up to release. I actually released from out of the RDAP dorm.
So what's interesting is two things. One is, ironically, I also took up painting while I was away, and I also taught over 60 classes while I was away, and I did a 5-year bid. But what I wanted to miss, I think that is that needs to be set straight, is that men and women that are in prison often they don't do anything, that they sit in their cells all day, that there's no education programming, and that's just not true.
I couldn't agree more, right? And one of the things, and I obviously haven't done any studies on this, but it seems to me as I maintain contact with, I was locked up with thousands of guys over the years, right? You come to know a lot of people, even if you don't establish a friendship, but you know a lot of people. And one of the things that's kind of common is the men that I was with that seemed to be active, kept their minds engaged, did things. Those are the ones that seem to get out and they just seem to find a better path to success, however defined. And those that seem to spend their time in front of the TV or sitting around complaining about, what a bad lot in life they have and how it's everybody else's fault, those seem to be the ones that they get out and they struggle to find any sort of traction.
So one of the things that I'm curious about is, and I think that the process of returning from prison actually starts the first day you go into prison. Like, you should be thinking about that. But the journey of coming home isn't so easy. Even for somebody like yourself, maybe that's pretty educated, done well before he went inside, and then, obviously took advantage of the time away to better himself in different ways, including programming and teaching and that kind of thing. But how was it? What was your return like? What were the challenges like?
There were a lot of challenges, and I agree. I'm fortunate, more fortunate than most. Upon release, my wife actually stayed with me the whole 13 years. It's such a rare thing, right, for that to happen, and it's a blessing that's in my life. But I will say that our families that love us and support us, and they vicariously see that what incarceration's about, it's not the same, right? You and I can talk about it because we've lived it. And so the people around me that care about me, they still don't understand how it continues to affect me. Even I'm out 6 years now, and it continues to affect me. There are things that do trigger me. There are things that I can't get comfortable with. And so some of the struggles had to do, frankly, with, I think, some of the shame and guilt that I carried out with me. And I like to try to make light of it by saying I caught a case of social anxiety while I was away, because I didn't have it before I went away. But when I got out, and I'm still that way. If I'm in a room with people, 8, 10 people, I'll be the last one to engage. It's not that I don't want to engage. It's just I can't get comfortable. I can't get comfortable with the surroundings and with the setting. And on the other side of the coin, I could stand in front of 500 people and talk about the work that we do and be completely comfortable. But in that
Isn't it funny how that happens?
Social setting, yeah, it really affects me, and it troubles me because sometimes I create these problems in my own head that don't exist, that people are passing judgment as I'm standing there. They're thinking about, what it was like to be locked up and with the crimes I committed, whatever it might be. And the reality is that they probably don't think about that. They probably don't care about that at that point.
Yeah, it's so true. But for me, I'm home 8 years, and the reality is it's only within the last year or so since I've taken my job as a CEO and doing so much national speaking and really engaging that I've come to a place in my life where I've forgiven myself. And that's really hard. Like I always tell people that the sentence that I gave myself was so far worse than what any judge could give me, because it was something that I lived with 24/7. And you talk about the guilt and the shame of hurting your family and being away and all those things, which you can't get back again. So forgiving myself was a big part of that journey. And I hear you. I think, there's still some things that are triggering keys, and, waking up to set many times during the night because you hear, somebody going around to count you, and which guards do at night in prisons. And even food and things like that are a little bit of a challenge sometimes. So I think there's a lot of that reintegration. Prison's a trauma. Coming home is an adjustment and readjusting, and then poses really specific challenges as you think about getting back into the workforce and getting your life back together. There's this whole family component that you want to make up for and kind of get back together. And then there's life. Like, what are you going to do with your life? I was 60. I'm 60 years old now, but I was 52 when I came home, and it was like, what's a 52-year-old ex-lawyer going to do? What am I going to do for a career and engage? You were really successful though. When you came home, there was a pathway for you. Can you tell us what was it that you started doing when you came home, and how did you land where you are now, which is a great place?
Well, when I was able to secure a job when I was in the prison visiting room, because one thing about being incarcerated, we'll talk to anybody, any place about anything, right? So it ends up that one of my cellmates has a visit coming from Chicago, guy he went to the same high school I did. We meet in the visiting room. I had about a year to go. He knew I had been locked up a long time. He said, what are you going to do when you get out? I said, I don't know. I've been teaching classes. I'm in this community outreach program that, I go out and speak to businesses and high school students and college students. And he said, well, send me some stuff. Let me see what you're doing. So I sent him, a big packet of stuff. And about 3 months to go, he comes to visit me. He got on my visiting list, comes to visit me and says, when you get back to Chicago, I want to hire you. And I went to work for him, and his father wanted to meet me. His father passed away a few years ago, but he started a nonprofit in Chicago called the CARA program. And it primarily works with single mothers, provides everything from diapers through employment. And so his father, a great man, and really had a heart for people. And so we go for lunch, and he said, oh, yeah, I want to help you. Can I help you? And I said, Mr. Owens, I'd be honored. And he introduced me to Tom Dart, who was and is the Cook County Sheriff. Wow. And so now I'm out 3 months, a little over 3 months, and they invite me to go in, 26 in California, behind double razor wire. I walked in really the hair on my neck literally stood up because just that feeling. And I walk in this room and there's got to be 20 cops in there, guns, badges, their brown jackets. And the woman sitting in the middle is the director of programming. And I was nervous as I could be. And she looked at me and she said, Augie, sit down, tell us your story. And so I did. And they asked me to bring with some of the classes I'd been teaching on the inside. And before the meeting even ended, she said, we don't have anything like this. Can I get you to help us out? Can I get you to come in here and do this? And that's how this all started.
So tell us a little bit about what's the work that you do, and how did it all shape out?
Today I call it reentry programming, but at the time it was for people on the inside. I put together a pretty meaningful goal-setting program because I think that while incarcerated, we can work on those type of skills. We can develop good and productive habits and learn the skill of developing habits. I had put together some financial literacy things, and I put together kind of employment readiness stuff. Because just to take one step back, Jeff, I saw what you saw, right? Federal prison, we had microwaves in those days. I don't know, maybe they still do, I'm not sure. But the night before somebody's going home, you make a couple of burritos or prison pizza, you shake hands, you wish them well, off they go. And then 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, they're back. And, they look different. They released to different states and cities, but the stories were the same. The reasons that they were returning were the same, that they were, first, many had an unresolved substance use disorder. So they're getting out and going right back into those same behaviors. Some had been out of the workforce so long they didn't have any current marketable skills. So those are some of the things that I would see. And so when I built, while I was in RDAP building, reentry for myself, it became popular, when I share with some of the guys, and then RDAP made it in Duluth. It was mandatory that you had to go through this little reentry program to complete RDAP. So anyway, that's what I had worked on the inside. So when I talked to Cook County, I said, this is what I would go through. But when I got out, I was able to really, my experience increased tenfold because I saw what it was like to try to get a car when they tell you you're not even in the system anymore. You don't have bad credit. You don't exist. And then I talk about how I navigated through that. And I had access to the internet, so I was able, the programs that I put together on the inside, just using articles and books and, my own knowledge or whatever, I was able to really get online and turn them into something a lot more, a lot better informed.
It's awesome because honestly, it's not until you go through it that you can really understand some of the challenges that men and women go through when they come home. Things that we never even really think about. For example, having a bank account. Having credit. I think I had credit. My credit score was as low as a dead person's. It was like almost non-existent. And rebuilding that, just those little things, transportation, clothing. I remember I borrowed my first tie when I came home because I didn't have a tie for an interview that I was going to. But things like digital literacy skills and understanding how to use a computer was foreign to me. Like I didn't know how to use an iPhone. The iPhones came out while I was away. I didn't know that. And imagine for you it was 10 times worse because there's technology had taken leaps from the day you first went in.
The guy who hired me, I get to work the first day. I'm waiting for the door to unlock because I was able to get out of the halfway house with a pass at 6 a.m. So I'm just waiting, standing happy as can be, the only goof on the block wearing a tie. And I get inside and he said, listen, I've got some meetings this morning. I'll see you this afternoon. While I'm gone, just go ahead and put together your LinkedIn profile. And I'm fumbling around. They give me this little notebook computer trying to figure it out. And there's a woman that works in the office. She doesn't know me, doesn't know my story at this point. And she walks out. She was like an angel. She walked out to me and said, can I help you? And her name is Holly. She's just terrific. But she sat down with me to help me do it because otherwise I was so frustrated. I was embarrassed. I didn't know, what am I going to tell this guy when he comes back? He took a chance to hire me and I'm going to tell him I can't even figure out how to set up a LinkedIn profile. So technology, those things it creates a lot of anxiety, huh? I mean, those types of things,
Yeah, it really does.
Certainly was an experience that I still remember.
So we're going to talk, we're going to take a break in a second, but we're going to be talking about careers and opportunities and a little bit about the work you do now. So I want to I'm setting you up now so you can think about it, because I know you got that whole script down on the work that you do. But coming home and finding a career opportunity is a real challenge, and understanding the nuances of what it really means to interview and to be afraid of being confronted with the inevitable, which is that background check that's going to come back and how you deal with it. And I found that transparency and being open about it was my secret sauce. It was how I ended up learning how to tell my story better, and really getting people to understand that I made some bad choices in life, but this is what I had to deliver for them. That these are the assets I brought to the table, and we're going to talk through some of that. But you're listening to the Looking Forward Show. We are on WWDB AM Talk 860, and we'll be right back.
You've been listening to the Looking Forward Show on WWDB AM Talk 860. If you'd like to be a guest on the Looking Forward Show, or if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, you can reach us at lookingforwardshow@gmail.com. This program is being sponsored in part by the PD Green Program. The PD Green Program provides education, tutoring, and support for men and women that have been touched by our justice systems. To reach or get more information about the PD Green Program, you can reach them at greenprogram.org. And now, back to the show.
We are back with Augie here at the Looking Forward Show. I'm super excited about this conversation today. And Augie, your story is amazing. So thank you for sharing. And a lot of times it's hard for us to kind of relive some of this because it's so impactful for us. But I want to talk today about careers. And can you tell the audience a little bit about the work you do today?
I started this by going in person into jails and halfway houses, treatment centers, and instructing the courses. And I had my workbooks that were photocopied, and I would go in and I'd spend a day in Cook County Jail, spend half a day in Kane County Jail, and so on and so forth. Then COVID came, and so I got the call, we're locked down. And I went from being busy 5 days a week to having no place to go, except one treatment center was open. And it was at that time a friend of mine reached out from Atlanta, and he knew me and knew my story, and he invited me to my wife and I to move down here. He said he'd like me to help him build out his business office. He has a construction company. And I told him, I'm glad to help, but as soon as this COVID thing is over, I'm going back to what I was doing. And he and his cousin and I had an original partner, co-founder in Chicago for this, but they put me on Johnny Cash's stage in Nashville. They brought in a professional film crew, and we took all the stuff I had been marching in and out of facilities with and instructing it in person, put it all into a digital format. And so now we're in 18 states and growing, and that's what I do. Is I'm in jails every week. I like to be involved. I like to interact with the population. I like to shake hands. I do workshops. I'm going to a prison in Mississippi to do toward the end of the month. I'm going to be doing a couple of workshops on entrepreneurship with a background and how, some of the additional challenges that we have to get through. So that's what we do now. We work with, we're on smartphones for people on probation. We're on tablets, but we have that we still do stuff live, in person, eyeball to eyeball, because on the inside, in my opinion, there's no substitute for that. Right?
For sure. So what's the name of the company?
The name of the company is Second Opportunity, and we go by Second Op, and that's with the number 2 letters NDOPP. So we're Second Op.
You can be reached at secondop.com, right?
Yes.
That's your website.
Yes.
Awesome. So I want to talk to you about Second Op because, you're helping people get back and overcome some barriers. And one of the things that I noticed, and I'm doing some homework on you, not that I needed to, but was your theory about the jigsaw puzzle, and that your analysis that really coming home is really like a jigsaw puzzle, putting all the pieces together, and one missing piece can really ruin the puzzle for you, because it could be an important piece that paints the whole picture of what's going on in your life. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges that are facing individuals that are coming home?
That's a really great question. So the first thing that jumps into my mind is wanting to do too much, too fast, too soon. And when I talk to a sheriff, for example, about, wanting to go into their facility, I tell them, you got a facility here that's filled with men and women that want to do 100 things the first day they get released. And the reality is they'll be lucky to do one. And so it's not about eliminating these goals and ambitions that we have, but it's about having a structured plan, recognizing that I'm not walking out the first day and starting a company. I'm not walking into the bank and getting a line of credit. So there's things I need to do. And interesting about the jigsaw puzzle, I mean, part of it is a career. Jeff, you and I are lockstep on that. It's essential to try to find something that we're passionate about, that brings us happiness and gets us enthused. So we can't wait to get our day started. But we also, I think, have to be fair to ourselves when we first get out to say that there's a lot of things we're going to be dealing with. Life moves awfully fast. I'm still trying to figure out if my kids like me again. I got all these other things going on. And so, getting into the career, it's not the only thing we have to focus on. There's a lot of other things that they're not distractions. They're life happening around us.
Yeah, and some big pieces of that puzzle. I'll give you a few and tell me if it hits home at all. A driver's license. Just state identification and coming home often requires 2 pieces of ID when you go into the DMV and you try to apply. And gosh, who knows where? I couldn't even remember where my birth certificate was. And most of my stuff was destroyed in a flood while I was away. And I was like, I had nothing. Like I had to go to find my birth certificate and find, another piece of ID and chip away at some of those things that often we just take for granted. We don't realize that, many times people come home, they don't have some of the things that, we would expect them to have. Your tax returns haven't been filed in quite some time because you haven't needed to. So a lot of those little pieces that come into play, but they're also big parts of the puzzle. And then there's challenge after challenge that kind of, and life that just comes in. I remember I wanted to do everything at one time, like coming home, and I was really intentional about every day. I just wanted one small victory. But the big thing I wanted to really drive to talk to you about today is the notion of finding that career opportunity and that the opportunity that employers are now giving today. So in the time that you've been home, have you noticed a change in the way men and women that are just as impacted are now starting to get employment or find employment? And what is that looking like for the people that you work with?
So I'm going to say, yes, I have noticed a change without question. When I first got out, having been a business owner in my previous life, I was invited to speak at a chamber of commerce in the Chicagoland area. And then I was being passed from one county to another. And that's what I was talking about, is the value of hiring people that have backgrounds. And it was still a struggle. But I think today it's more accepted. I think there's some things that are that have helped to contribute to that. I think the number one thing, frankly, is need. I think that companies have need for employees, and they're willing now to look in places or consider people that they wouldn't previously consider. I think it's caused companies to change some of their archaic policies to say we won't hire somebody with a background just as a blanket statement, as opposed to evaluating the individual. So I think that's a part of it. And so I do think, I say when I'm in front of a group, I'll look in the eyes and say, if you're ready, willing, and able to work, there's a job out there for you.
For sure. I think part of what we've seen now is just the recognition by employers that they need talent, and that there's been this untapped talent pool of people out there that they've not hired in the past simply because of something that they've done. And sometimes goes back decades, sometimes, to 10, 15, 20 years ago, that appears on a record that has stopped them from employing someone. And I think that's begun to change because of the labor market needs. Like, we really need labor today. We really need people into some of those jobs. But I'm curious, and I'm going to challenge you now, because there was a recent article, as I mentioned earlier, by Sean and Jeff Korsenik about 3 myths or myths about hiring people with a criminal record. And I want to give you the myth, and then you tell me whether it's true or not, or whether we're going to dispel it today. But here's the first one. Myth number one, people with criminal histories are likely to commit another crime.
I'm going to say false.
Yeah, actually, most people who are convicted of a crime don't have a second conviction. And in fact, if you look at the data right now, more and more people are actually a vast majority of those people that are finding their way back inside of prisons and jails is literally because they violated something on their probation or parole. And they're not new offenses. And Sean, they did a full analysis of a data set in North Carolina that showed that 70% did not acquire a second conviction. And in fact, that number goes down, it gets higher as time goes. So the longer people are out, the less likely they are to get into trouble. And a lot of times that's often because of probation and parole is not as stringent. It's what I call the Meek Mill syndrome. If you're familiar with Meek Mill, the rapper, every time in Philadelphia that he took his child to work, which was in Camden, New Jersey, he crossed the bridge from Philadelphia to Camden, and he got a violation. So he literally had hundreds of violations for taking this kid to school every day. And that's just the way the system has been built, and it works. But the truth is today that, people that are coming home, really, they want to work. They want to find that passion. They want to find something they can do that is sustainable and that gives them a sustainable wage. I'll give you a second one. Myth number two, recidivism, which is going back inside of prison, depends on the type of crime committed.
I'm going to say true.
And we're giving the X on that one. No, actually, the type of crime is a really poor indicator of risk of future offending, which is interesting. And I think in my experience, as I've come home and worked with thousands and thousands of men and women, what I've come to understand is because they've committed an offense once in their life or a time in their life, doesn't the nature of the offense really has very little to do with whether they go back inside again. And again, there's other factors that come around all of that. Now, you even lost one. The third myth was there's no way to tell whether someone will reoffend.
I think that's false.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think there's a really good. Although in their article, they talk about the research that there are factors that you can look for to determine whether somebody's likely to go back. For example, do they have a job opportunity? Have they finished school? Are they going to school? Do they have stable housing? Do they have some of those pieces of your puzzle that you've talked about? Really super important stuff. But the truth is that I believe that every individual should be taken on their own merit, that you should interview an individual and they should be willing to tell their story about what choices they made that got them into trouble. And most importantly, what did they learn from it all? There's two reasons why people get hired in this world. One is because they make a company money or they save a company money. And if you can express what you bring to the table that's going to help an employer do that, that's like 5 steps ahead, and that's what's going to get an employer to really give you consideration and give you an opportunity to do what you do. Careers and career opportunities are really one of the biggest challenges for people as they come home, finding something above the job, but something that they really love to do. But I'm curious from your perspective. You work with people all the time. What happens when you work with them inside and you're preparing them from the reentry perspective, but they walk out the door and those other pieces of the puzzle aren't there? Like you don't have community support, you don't have family support, you don't have maybe addiction support or housing or food or whatever, all those things that you need. How do you convey the importance of having that network before you get out and that transition piece and some of the work that you do?
There were men that never went to the phone room. I mean, I was in 2 places that the phones were in a separate building. And the reason they never went is because there was nobody that would push 5 to actually take their call. And there were men that never saw the inside of the visiting room. So I think it's a mistake for people to assume that everybody's got a family to return to or that type of thing. But we need to start to look at, who can I, and the other thing I'd like to point out is that many people, their network contributed, provided the provided the opportunity for them to be involved in the behavior that landed them in prison. So, for example, if I'm going back to the house that I lived in before and everybody in the house is continuing to use illegal drugs, then that puts me in harm's way right off the bat. So I think we have to have a realistic assessment of what our support system might look like. And if we don't have what would be something that we feel can support the needs that we're going to have related to just the emotional and acceptance needs, then we need to start to figure out, because there are organizations out there that provide peer support, they provide mentoring, nonprofits and faith-based groups that will be there to take our hand and kind of walk us forward. And then that might be what we need to look at, because the status quo of going back to where we came from, that gives us the recidivism numbers that we see that are so horrific. And so we need to be willing to look and explore, where can I help to get some of the emotional support that I'm going to need.
Yeah, it does take a village. One of the statistics people should know is about 2/3 of the men and women that are in the justice system will go back within 5 years. They'll find their way back into the system. And that's a tragedy. And that, to me, says that we're just not doing a good enough job helping people, number one, prepare for what they need when they come home, but also giving them the supports that they need when they walk out the door. There are a lot of things when it comes to employment that are out there that have started to kind of are wiggling and kind of helping people a little bit. Not sure how much I'm convinced that they help, but things like ban the box laws, which say you can't ask the question about do you have a criminal background on a job application. You can't actually ask it in some states, like in Pennsylvania, until you've been given a conditional offer of employment. And then there's things like pardons and expungements that help get things off your record, or clean slate laws. There's a lot of things that we're chipping away at. We're beginning to understand that if we can remove little pieces of them, that maybe it'll guide them to a path where, they can be successful. We're gonna take another quick break, but when we come back, Augie, I really want the call to action. Like, I'm going to be asking you about the secret sauce, because you obviously have found it. You're doing remarkably well. Second Up is really it's nationally recognized, and I know from the people that I talk to and work with that you're doing great work. I want to know the secret sauce. So you're listening to the Looking Forward Show, and we're going to be right back. I'm Jeff Abramowitz.
You've been listening to the Looking Forward Show on WWDB-AM Talk 860. If you'd like to be a guest on the Looking Forward Show, or if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, you can reach us at lookingforwardshow@gmail.com. This program is being sponsored in part by the PD Green Program. The PD Green Program provides education, tutoring, and support for men and women that have been touched by our justice systems. To reach or get more information about the PD Green Program, you can reach them at greenprogram.org. And now, back to the show.
We are back at the Looking Forward Show. We're on WWDB AM Talk 860 and on 97.5 HD2 FM in the Philadelphia area. You can also check us out on a YouTube station and all of your favorite podcasting venues. Get in there. If you want to be a guest or a sponsor on the show, just send me an email, lookingforwardshow@gmail.com. It's easy peasy, and we'd love to have you. We're really looking forward to continuing to build our network and getting some great guests on, as we have today with Augie. Thank you so much, Augie, for being here today. I wanted to get to that last. I gave you a setup. I gave you a few seconds to kind of think about it, but you've done amazing work since you've come home at Second Op. And I'm curious, what's the secret sauce? Like, what is it that you brought to the table that we need to be sharing to both those men and women behind the walls and also people that have come home?
I spent time every day, almost my entire sentence, preparing to release. I think that if there is a secret sauce, that's part of the formula. I think we need to be realistic. Jeff, early in this conversation, you talked about forgiving yourself, and that's so important, but it's a process, right? I mean, first I take responsibility for my bad choices, my poor decisions. Then I get angry with myself. How could I have been so foolish? How could I have been so greedy? But then I get to the point where I forgive myself, and that's when I think that it makes it easier to think about what's my life going to look like after this. So that's part of it. And I think that we have to accept the fact that there's going to be struggles. I think walking out of a a prison or a jail thinking that everything is just going to happen the way I want it to. I think that's setting up for failure. I think we need to be realistic in assessing the obstacles that we're going to confront and be prepared for that.
So it's interesting, but there's statistically about 86% there are documented over 40,000 barriers to people coming home. And they say that about 86% of those things that impacted you when you come home or stood in your way never really go away. They always hang out there somewhere. And it's really true. I went and took some time off after the new year, went to the Dominican Republic on vacation. And I actually had to change my shirt going through customs because I was sweating so profusely. I just was so nervous about leaving the country and coming back in the country. And it just was a fear that I had that something in my background would not allow me to come back in, or something would happen while I was away. And it was totally something I made up in my head. Like it was a great vacation. I had no problem whatsoever, but it just gets stuck in your head, these little things. And now I'm at a much better place because I think something that you've come to recognize as well is we need to be comfortable within our own skin, of the work that we're doing, and know that we're really doing some good. So how can people get more information about Second Ops?
Certainly our website, secondop.com, 2ndopp.com. You can call 847-257-2713, and you can email me directly, Augie, Augie, at secondop.com. We've got a lot on our website. We have a passion for doing this. The one thing that has been so beneficial is that I have, just through pure luck, been able to find people to work with me that have passion for this cause as well and are committed to just doing what we do. And that is the secret sauce, Jeff, is that whatever it is that we do, I think we have to be passionate about. And it may not be, probably won't be, our first position upon release. We might need to get some additional skills, some additional education, some additional on-the-job training, whatever it is, but we should be moving in that direction. And then when we get there, it should be something that absolutely ignites us, that we just feel like this is something I want to do. Because I'll tell you that where I'm at in my life compared to where I was before I went away, I'm grateful for everything that goes on, and I'm passionate about what I do. I really like being in this fight because I think it's a fight worth having.
Yeah, it's really interesting, too, because I remember my first job when I came home, I was living in a homeless shelter, and my first job was teaching GED math, and I was making $7 an hour. And I remember when I first got in there, I had never taught before. I taught while I was away in prison, and I never taught. I taught a little bit of college before I went away, but I never really taught a GED class or math or anything like that. I had to really study and done some work inside, so I was kind of fresh. I kind of had a little bit of group going. I knew how to teach and run a classroom. I had been a trial lawyer for a long time, so I could work an audience a little bit. But definitely was starting at the ground level, entry level position. But I remember my first second week of work, my boss called me, and she's a really super lady and a great friend. And she called and she said, Jeff, we have your first, we want to send you your first paycheck. Do you have a bank account? Because everything's direct deposit where we are. And I honestly did not have a bank account. I had a financial crime. It was really challenging for me to get a bank account when I first came home. And I had to explain that to her. And then we kind of figured a way around it, and we were able to deal with it. But those little issues just kept, were very intentional. But, I came home making minimum wage and living in a shelter. And the thought for me was just one victory a day. And my victories were simple, like a good meal, getting a library card, getting some clothing, getting a new toothbrush or something else I needed for my wardrobe or whatever it might be. But every day I was kind of chipping away at it. And I don't want to ever kind of forget that, because I think it's what keeps me pretty well planted in the work that I do, is just thinking back on some of those challenges and what it was like in the community that I lived in. Was in North Philadelphia, a really challenging area of our country with drugs and also gun violence. It was really hard. But It also was something that I'm curious about from your end. I'm not sure that had I gotten a sentence of 30 days or 60 days, that I would have gotten what I got out of it today. I'm wondering if you had just gotten a short sentence or if you had took that plea bargain, would you be in the same place you are today, you think?
No, no, no. I would say that I needed to really come to grips with what was important in my life, and I had been living my life about things that looked important, but they really weren't. And when I first got in, they were when I started, the compound was in the middle of a food strike, so they threw me right in the hole, and I sat there for 5 or 6 days, and I had never been locked up before, and I had had my last cigarette in the prison parking lot, and so it was really a stressful time. But at that point, I realized that everything that I thought was important didn't matter. The car, the house, whatever it might be. And so I think that I'm comfortable saying that my life is where it is because of what I went through. And so while I wish I wasn't away so long because of the time I missed in my children's lives, both my parents died while I was away, I had to kind of wake up as to what really mattered. And now I feel like I do something that really matters, and there is no substitute for that in the way that I go about my day.
So we're coming towards the end of the show, but I have so many more questions for you. I know that the Second Up is doing some great work behind the walls. Are they also supporting people as they come home in the reentry space on the outside? And how could people learn more about the work that you do?
So just contact me. We're looking for people that want to be involved in what we're doing, and we're looking to help people that have needs. So we have an inside out approach that we do help people on the outside. In fact, we've got several people that work in reentry services that they answer the phone every day, and we help people with referrals for employment, for transitional housing, those that need to get into treatment, that type of thing. We work with their families in anticipation of release, and so we try to be hands-on with this. But unfortunately, and I mean this sincerely, there's so many people that we encounter that get out that are they're so ill prepared. They haven't put any thought, in my opinion, into what the next steps are going to be. And that's what we want to help with, is on the inside. What are my next steps going to be? How can I prepare for, I don't know, Jeff, if I'm over dramatizing, but it's like reentry is like preparing for a battle, because you don't know what's going to come at you from what direction, right? You don't know what's going to happen. And so to be mentally ready to deal with everything that's going to come your way, when the halfway house says that they're not giving out any passes that weekend that you've been waiting for and hoping for, but nobody's getting a pass because some sort of infraction took place in the facility. It's difficult things to deal with in that moment.
So true. And there's so many stories that I have. I was just thinking, so I've journaled every day since I went in, from the very first night up until recently. I journal and I talk about my journey. And it's really just cathartic for me to think back on how my day went, what it was like. But I have so many stories when you look back, and things like that I just chuckle at now. That I remember I was out of the halfway house or on the weekends, and they gave me an ankle monitor, and the ankle monitor had a cord to it. And there wasn't a night that went by when I was at my brother's house, because I was staying with my brother on the weekends. The cord would be wrapped around my head because it was so long, and you had to keep it attached to get charged. And if you didn't get charged, it would go off call in 5 minutes, and you're afraid of having to go in and get checked in. It was literally, it took me by public transportation a good 2 hours to get from my brother's house into the halfway house that I was staying at. So just little challenges, but I think about all those things. And again, it just is an awareness of, you have to be willing to accept it. And the way I explain it to people today is those were all lessons. Like every single thing to me, I sat down and I'm super reflective today. I don't know if you are, but I'm super reflective over things. Like I sit down after this is done today, I'm going to sit down and say, how'd that go? Well, I should have asked it this way, or I didn't ask a good question there. That wasn't a good segment. We should have gone more on that. Like I'm really super reflective and take self-responsibility for everything today. Like I believe I hold myself accountable for that. And that's something that I never did before. Even as a lawyer, there was always an excuse. Oh, it was the judge's ruling, or I had a bad client, or whatever it was. And today I can't walk past a homeless person and not engage and just say, how you doing? They're there, they're in front of me. And that's something that I've never had before. And it gives me this amazing sense of just who I am. It just makes me feel like this is who I want to be. This is the person that I always wanted to be. And for some reason, it just took me a long time to get there. We have a lot of our folks are in the criminal justice space. They're either behind the walls as professionals, they're educators that are doing this work. They're in our PEP programs, our prison education programs, and the PD Green program, and others. And it's important for you to know there are places like Second Op that you can go to and get some of that support. I know this program is sponsored by the PD Green program, and we are truly looking forward to an opportunity to work with Second Op going forward and bring education, that education puzzle piece to the table, because I think it is a piece that often is not given enough attention because of all the other jigsaw puzzle pieces that are out there trying to put together. Education doesn't rise to the top when you come home, but we need to prioritize it. We need to get people to understand that if you can get smarter and you can get those digital literacy skills and financial literacy skills and really your math and reading up, where you're not just entry level anymore. Now you're a supervisor, and then you're moving up the ladder even more. And that's where change happens, really. Augie, before we go, I know we talked a little bit about how to reach Second Op, and I'm just curious. You and I we've bumped into each other at conferences from time to time, and I love seeing you, catching up with you at some of the national conferences that we both go to. But what's next for you? Like, what is it that what do you see down the pike that your next bridge to climb over, or mountain to climb over?
I think what I'd like to start doing is producing content that's directly responsive to needs that are on the inside. So as an example, I heard and read that right now there are 81,000 veterans that are incarcerated. And to me, that's, it's a travesty. But I also note that there's seems to be not enough content, not enough courses, not enough programs available on the inside for veterans. And so I would like to be involved in something like that. I'd like to be involved in creating content that is meaningful for juvenile justice situations to correct some of those paths. Like to be involved in creating content that can be brought on the inside and also shared with families about trauma and the impact of trauma on somebody who's incarcerated and how it could show and manifest itself upon release. Why does he act like that, or why does she do it this way? And maybe that will help people to be a little more patient and understanding of us when we get out and we don't seem to be the same person we were when we went in.
Awesome. Augie, congratulations on your journey. Congratulations on Second Op. Augie Ghilarducci, if you want to reach him, super, super simple. Second Op, it's 2ndopp.com. Reach out, and he's doing some just tremendous work in this space, and definitely can help you if you have come home or if you're looking for that pathway to your next success as you begin to navigate both behind the walls and your reentry. Reach out to Second Op and check it out. Okay, congratulations. Thank you so much for being with us today. You've been listening to the Looking Forward Show. We are sponsored by the Going Green program, and really proud to be the CEO of the Going Green program. We are a national nonprofit that does educational tutoring inside of prisons and jails across the country, and just love what I do because we're helping people get smarter so that they can succeed on their journey. And that's just a great thing. So you're listening to Looking Forward Show. My name's Jeff Abramowitz. Again, check us out on WWDB AM Talk 860, 97.5 HD2 FM, and all of your favorite podcast venues should have it, or check us out on our YouTube station. Again, if you want to be a guest on the show, simple. lookingforwardshow@gmail.com. Check us out. The Looking Forward Show. I'm Jeff Abramowitz. Have a good one, everybody.
You've been listening to The Looking Forward Show on WWDB AM Talk 860. If you'd like to be a guest on The Looking Forward Show, or if your organization would like to share an event that they have coming up, or if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, you can reach us at lookingforwardshow@gmail.com. The Looking Forward Show has been brought to you in part by the PD Green Program. Founded in 2008, the PD Green Program supports the academic goals of men and women behind and beyond the walls of our prisons and jails. Since its founding, the PD Green Program has tutored roughly 16,000 students in over 50 correctional facilities and reentry programs across the country. They've recruited over 3,200 volunteer tutors from 30 universities and do work in over 14 states, including the District of Columbia. If you'd like to learn more about the PD Green Program, you can go to www.pdgreen.org. PD Green Program. Check it out. You can listen to the Looking Forward Show on the Looking Forward YouTube channel and coming soon on all of your favorite podcast venues.